Hi, I'm Zoe Halstead, and I'm from the Australian Institute of International Affairs. I'm joined here today by Dr. Duane Meneses. Thank you so much for joining me, Duane.
Thank you very much for having me.
Duane is the founder and director of the Polar Research and Policy Institute and just co-hosted a roundtable discussion on the Sustainable Development Goals in the Arctic. The discussion talked a lot about the role of the Arctic Council in the region, which today was actually nominated for a Nobel Prize. So, Duane, could you tell us what is the Arctic Council?
The Arctic Council is the premier intergovernmental body dealing with the Arctic. It comprises 8 Arctic Council member states. Those are the 8 countries that have some interest in the Arctic due to their geography. You get the US because of Alaska, Canada because of the Yukon, Northwest Territories, and Nunavut that go into the Arctic, Iceland because it has some territorial sea, some sea in the Arctic, the Kingdom of Denmark with Greenland, Faroe Islands, and Denmark, Finland, Norway, Sweden, and of course Russia. So you have 8 Arctic Council member states, you have 13 observers, so it does engage with non-Arctic states that might wish to contribute to the Arctic debate. These are 13 state observers and then many non-state observers, and the 13 Arctic Council observers include Asian players like China, Japan, South Korea, India, and Singapore. Australia and New Zealand are not yet observers, but we would love to see that happen someday. At least I would. So, yeah.
And people say that things change in the Arctic much more rapidly than other parts of the world. Can you explain to us what the state of the Arctic is now?
So we know the Arctic is warming twice as fast as anywhere else. There are also challenges arising from thawing permafrost and the methane emissions and how that leads to increased warming, rising sea levels. These are the issues we often hear about: endangered polar bear populations. But beyond climate, there is also the critical human dimension. The Arctic is an ocean surrounded by land. There are people who've lived in the Arctic for tens of thousands of years. We have indigenous communities across Canada, across the Canadian North, the Inuit, the Gwich'in, the Athabascan, the same with Alaska, the Athabascan and Aleut in Alaska. You have the Sami in the 4 Nordic countries, Sweden, Norway, Finland, the 3 Nordic countries, and Russia. The Inuit are also found in sort of the easternmost portion of Russia. So again, with this spread, indigenous issues is also a very big issue.
And so how do the Sustainable Development Goals help in solving these issues in the Arctic?
Right, because when it comes to the indigenous population, or the northern population, because there are also non-indigenous people living in the Arctic for many, many years, there are challenges that are immediate and related to climate, not always, but very often. They include healthcare, they include challenges with sanitation, with water security, food security, energy security, telecommunications, infrastructure, employment, innovation. You have some of the highest rates of mental health issues in the north, highest rates of suicide and depression. Alcoholism can be quite high. There are lots of challenges, social and economic challenges that we face there. There's a housing is quite, again, another crisis area. So to talk about the Arctic, we can't limit the talk to just climate. Climate is integral and indispensable to the global dialogue about the Arctic. We cannot undermine the role climate plays in Arctic development or Arctic challenges, but we cannot at the same time neglect the human dimension and all of these various challenges that are related to it, because there are people living there and their lifestyles are affected by what's happening around them. And whether we engage with them through industry or support them in how we articulate the Arctic dialogue, it is important we bear their concerns, aspirations, hopes, challenges in mind, and do so with sensitivity, but also really putting their voice first.
And obviously some of the issues that you discuss, especially when it comes to Indigenous communities, are also issues faced in Australia. So do you think that there is the potential for Australia to play a greater role in promoting the Sustainable Development Goals in the Arctic?
Absolutely. With all of the Nordic countries, Canada, US, Australia, New Zealand as well, and when it comes to Indigenous issues, there are challenges in common, particularly due to legacies of colonisation and decolonisation. Canada, Australia, and New Zealand, of course, have some more immediate examples and more immediate similarities, just in different contexts. So whether you look at legacies of residential schooling or forced relocation, or the current move towards reconciliation, and the different countries have approached it differently sometimes and have reached different stages of building their dialogue with Indigenous communities. So yes, it's an enormous opportunity for knowledge exchange and cooperation in those areas. When it comes to dealing with how Aboriginal populations suffer with the criminal justice system, how do they respond to it? How do they get caught by it? What are the challenges when it comes to education? These are areas where there's an enormous opportunity for cooperation. Language revitalization, cultural protection, again, areas where greater sensitivity, but also positive programs would be very much welcome, I think. Yeah.
Well, Dwayne, thank you so much for taking the time to explain a bit more about the Arctic to us today, and the role that Australia could play in promoting the Sustainable Development Goals. And to our viewers, thank you so much for tuning in. For more interviews, analysis and commentary, check out the Australian Outlook website on internationalaffairs.org.au/Australian Outlook. Thank you.